Just read!
Hello everyone, and welcome to Park Primary's Reading Podcast, hosted this week by Ellis and Friday. Today we'd like to welcome Alan Windram, a visiting award-winning author who's came all the way down from Oban.
Hi Alan, how are you? How was your trip down?
It was good. It wasn't too wet. I'm really well, thank you. And it's really nice to meet you and be in Park Primary School.
We'd like to ask you some questions, if that's okay.
That'll be fine.
How did you end up becoming an author in the first place?
Well, I only became an author about 10 years ago, but I used to dress up and do events for nursery school children. And then I thought, I love doing this, and the friend that I work with wrote books, and she said, why don't you write some books and then you can go into primary schools as well. So that's how I got started.
That sounds so cool. What was the first book you've ever wrote?
First book I wrote was based on the character, because I dressed up as this character called Mac, who was a farmer. So I decided to write a story about what the farmer got up to with his dog Bob on the farm. So the first one was called Mac and Bob and the Unexpected Visitor.
Do you find it difficult to write? How do you come up with your ideas?
Well, I find it really hard to just sit in front of a blank piece of paper and to come up with ideas. So I like to go walking, and then it allows my mind just to wander and come up with loads of ideas. So I get lots of ideas when I'm going out walking.
Oh, that's so cool. What do you think about books in general?
I think books are absolutely amazing because you can go into other worlds and let your imagination run wild as well.
Did you like reading when you were little?
I was quite slow at reading, but I liked reading books about animals and adventure books, but it wasn't until I was about 10, 11, 12 that I really started to get into books, and I really enjoy them now.
Do you have a favourite author or book that's not yours?
Oh, that's a hard one. A favourite author. I read so many different books. I like a lot of adult books for big people that are adventure stories. But I really liked when I was younger, and a book that got me into reading was The Hobbit. Have you heard of that book?
Yeah.
Do you know who it's by? Can you remember that?
No.
It's by a man called J.R.R. Tolkien, and he also did the Lord of the Rings books. And these were adventures about little people and big battles and things like that. And I loved that when I was at school.
Did you?
Do you have much time to read at home?
Yeah, no, but I tend to read just before I go to bed, and sometimes I'm that tired that I only get 2 pages and then I fall asleep.
Yeah.
But then other times if I'm away,
all the time.
I know when I'm away from home, I always take a book, because sometimes I have a lot of time in between, maybe visiting schools, so I try to read then.
Were you good at reading when you were at school?
I was, as I said to you, I kind of started a bit later, but I wasn't very good at reading out loud because I sometimes jumbled up my words and I got too nervous reading out loud at school. But then when I had time to read on my own...
It's kind of like me.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I know, well, sometimes you get nervous reading out loud, and I jumbled up the words a bit. But at home, I can take all the time I want, and I really like reading now.
We're part of the Reading Ambassadors group in our school. Our job is to promote reading and share information through this podcast. Do you think it is important for children to have a love of reading?
I think it's really important because it's not just storybooks, but you can read books about what they call non-fiction books, so they're not storybooks, but you find out about people from history, and you find out about things about geography or interesting facts and things that are really, they change how you think about everything. But then also storybooks are amazing because, like I said before, you can go into these different worlds and you can pretend that you're a cowboy or whatever, you know, and just it helps your language as well, the way you talk, because you'll think, oh, that's an interesting word, I'll maybe use that when I talk to people.
Yeah.
You're here to host a workshop with the P1s to P3s. What kind of things do you do in the workshop?
Oh, well, the workshops. You guys are getting to both come along to them in this workshop too. You are.
Oh, we didn't know that.
Well, there you go. You get to come along. So,
That's with the reading ambassadors.
I'm talking about my one button mini books, which are about a robot who's only got one button. And the first book won the biggest picture book prize in Scotland. So loads of children got this book. But in my event, I don't just read the stories. There's singing, there's dancing, we make up a song, and we have a superhero quiz. Lots of things to get people excited about reading and about stories.
So cool. Do you ever get stage fright, and is it scary standing in front of people?
The only times I get stage fright is when there's hardly anybody there. I find it really easy with lots of people, but when there's only one or two people, sometimes I've done events in bookshops and maybe only one or two people have turned up, and I find it scarier when there's hardly anybody, but when there's loads of people, it's fine. But yeah, it can get a wee bit scary sometimes, especially if it's a new book. So these books, I've been doing events for quite a little while, so I'm really happy with those. But I've got a new book coming out next year, and I've never done anything with that, so I'll be first few times I think I'll be a wee bit scared.
We do a word of the week podcast. Do you have a favourite word or phrase at all?
Oh, well, one of the words, I used to be in a band, played music as well, and my band was called Splendid. And I love that word because it is so positive. Not everything's always splendid, but it's a really fun word. That's my favourite word.
Okay, thanks so much for joining us. We hope you have a safe journey home, Alan. Now it's time for the word of the week with Lucy.
Word of the week. Word of the week. Word of the week. Word of the week. Word of the week.
The word of the week this week is enchanted. Enchanted, adjective. Definition, filled with delight and magic. Example, the children were enchanted by the beautiful fairy tale.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this week's episode. Come back next time for more Just Read podcast fun.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.